I'm not even going to say if this appeals to you. I don't even care if it doesn't, because you should check it out. You're going to love it anyway. Welcome and welcome back, everybody. Tabletop Toki here, and in today's video, I will be sharing with you my top 10 solo board games 2023 edition. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer: I do have a few other top 10 solo lists, so I will not be including any of these titles on this year's list. This year's list is dedicated to games that I've learned about or really been enjoying in particular throughout this past year and a half or so, basically since I made my last video. And while I know that a lot of the games on this list were very small pocket sized games, one of the reasons why is because I will, spoiler alert, be having another video coming out within the next month or so of my top 10 solo flexible games. And those games are typically ones that have a little bit more breadth them. So a lot of the physically larger games that I like to play solo may not be on that list. So make sure you subscribe down below and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss it when that comes out. But without further ado, let's get started. Number 10 on this list is a game from one of my favorite designers, and this is the newest game in his line of games from the Solo Hero series, Reckland Run from designer Scott Almes. This is the follow-up to its predecessor, Warp's Edge, which is another solo game from Scott Almes, but instead of doing bag building in space, in Reckland Run, you are going to be driving through a post-apocalyptic wasteland and adding modifications to your vehicle in order to be able to fight off raiders. I personally really love a great game that has dice with excellent dice mitigation. I'm not a big fan of luck-based games, but I like to have games where I feel like I get a scenario and then I can adapt to it. Reckland Run does exactly that. So planning out which parts of your vehicle you want to upgrade when, if you want to have more abilities to attack, if you want to have more abilities to manipulate dice, there are a lot of options there. And as you progress throughout the campaign, with each story that you go through, you're going to be able to unlock new abilities and modify your vehicle even more. This one has a really low barrier of entry with the first scenario, and it really ramps up as you continue to progress through the campaign. The other thing I really love about Reckland Run is your play board is basically your vehicle, and the different raiders and bosses that you fight along the way will maneuver around your vehicle, and based on where they are, you'll be able to interact with them in different ways. Like there are cards that have a border where you can ram for damage, or where you can lure them to a particular spot and then do a big AoE effect of damage. I really love the puzzliness of this game mixed in with the really fun dice rolling, upgrading your vehicle. I think it's a really fun one if you're looking for something that's simple to get into, but that adds in complexity over time, over multiple plays. That is Reckland Run from designer Scott Almes. Number 9 on this list is a super tiny micro game from designer Joe Klickfell, and that is Birdscaping. In Birdscaping, you are going to be creating a grid of birds. Each bird card will allow you to do a couple of different things with it. You'll be able to discard it for its nest or food value in order to play new birds, or you'll be able to discard it to attract wild birds into your hand. The cool thing about this is that as you go through, each bird will also have unique abilities or endgame scoring conditions as well as points, and they will activate in different ways. I love the multi-use cards here. It's always a challenge to know whether to discard the bird for the immediate effect or to try to get it into your grid so that you can activate it for its ability and then untap it in order to use the resources that are shown on the card. But the row that you put it in is also super important because it dictates which groups of birds you can activate all at once and which of the resources on the bird card you'll be able to use it for, whether that be nests, food, or attracting those curious birds. This one does play 1 to 2 players, but I have to say that I just super love playing it solo. It's extremely challenging, and it's not a beat your own score game. Each round, the AI opponent will be discarding bird cards to cycle through the deck and burn out the 4 rounds faster, And at the beginning of each round, it'll draw new bird cards that it will then be scoring for points. So you're trying to exceed the amount of points that the AI opponent will generate. Overall, it's super well designed. I will say that this game would probably be higher on the list for maybe some other people. For me, although the art is absolutely gorgeous and the presentation is phenomenal, it's not necessarily a theme that speaks to me, which is why it isn't higher on this list. But if that sounds good to you, I would definitely recommend checking out Birdscaping. And speaking of exciting themes, number 8 on this list is back to a theme that we are well versed in, the post-apocalyptic wasteland theme, and that is Dust Runner from designer Jason Glover. In this game, you are going to be racing through a desert wasteland, trying to get ahead of the raiders who are hot on your trail. This game has some really fun push your luck elements where you're going to be getting 2 scenario cards and you can choose to resolve the first one or the second. If you choose to pass on the first, you run the risk of having to fight even more challenging enemies because each enemy will have a health value dictated by whether it's revealed first or second in order. The reward, however, is that you will always get bonus loot from fighting enemies that are revealed on the second slot. It's such a small thing, but it makes for a really interesting, intense push your luck moment on each turn. This game is very compact. It plays very quickly. There's also a push your luck element of which resources you want to consume. For example, during combat, you want to consume ammo, which is a very precious resource, in order to get higher damage, to try to kill the raiders faster, or do you want to press on? I really love the multi-use resolution deck, which shows which opponent goes first, if the raiders move or not at the end of combat, if you get bonus loot, which loot you do receive, how much damage you receive from raiders. It's such a simple yet effective use of a small deck of cards in order to address all of those different things. I love that all of it fits in the tiny little mint tin. I think the design and aesthetic is super attractive. It's certainly up my alley. And this is one that I've just been having such a blast playing lately. So that is Dust Runner from designer Jason Glover. Game number 7 has a much more austere theme and presentation, but as soon as I played it, it was an instant favorite, and that is Ancient Realm, published by Button Shy Games. In Ancient Realm, you are going to be laying out cards vertically in order to build your realm, which will consist of buildings, citizens, royalty, and wonders. The catch here is that you'll be able to activate cards as you overlap them. So it's really challenging because a lot of the cards will give you really important benefits, resources, endgame scoring points, and the timing of when you cover what is super important. Wonders will give you huge benefits at the end of the game. However, they are very expensive to be able to build. And after you place a card into your realm, you'll flip over one of the 2 types of cards, which will either be those district cards, which will help you gather resources and get different abilities, or wonder cards. There are so many small decisions to make, even like which card you flip over, because the backs of the cards will have an effect that's in play. So if you really need that effect, it's a toss-up between, do I really want this type of card in my display in order to place it, or do I want to hang on to that effect in hopes that I'll be able to use it next round? You can discard wonder cards for resources, but then you're giving up obviously the points that you could be scoring with them. The placement and adjacency of cards is important as well for some of the endgame scoring. There are so many little puzzly things to keep track of. And that comes from such a simple mechanic of just creating a realm of cards in a line and sometimes overlapping cards as you go. I'll be honest and say that this was a game that I was not necessarily super hyped about when it was announced, but Button Shy sent me a copy and oh my gosh, I'm so glad they did because this has been such a satisfying pocket game to be able to bring along and play. It's one that I have introduced to quite a few people, even those who aren't necessarily super into solo gaming, and it's been a hit every time. So if that sounds good to you, definitely check out Ancient Realm from designer Stephen Aramini. Next on the list, we have another small pocket-sized game, a surprise, from a favorite designer of mine, and that is Nathan Munier's Mindburners Into the Void. In Mindburners Into the Void, you are playing as a clone test subject that is trying to win their freedom via a duel. You're going to be collecting different experimental technologies and using them to your advantage to defeat your opponents. In order to do that effectively, you're going to be drafting a total of 5 cards over 2 rounds. That's right, just 5 cards. Each card will have a base amount of points, iconography for scoring, binary, which comes into play for scoring, a basic scoring ability, and then an install ability. So once you've drafted all your cards, you're going to score all of those things, except you can only score the install ability of 2 of your cards. It sounds very small and limited, which makes for quick gameplay, but trust me when I say there are a lot of little things that you have to take into account, especially given the fact that when playing solo, the AI opponent is going to score all of their install abilities. Another really fun thing that makes this game feel really engaging from play to play is that once you have your 5 cards, you're going to be able to choose which order each card is going to go into. Some cards will give you a huge benefit if they're put in the 4th slot, but maybe that messes up your binary sequence that you need for your first card in order to score. So for only ending up with 5 cards in your roster, there are a lot of little details here that make for a really interesting and engaging experience. This game also does play excellently at 2 players, but it has been one that I have been able to just be able to whip out and play in like 5 or less minutes. Nathan's art, as always, is stunning. The presentation is excellent. The iconography is super clear. This has for sure been one of my go-to break pocket games when I just need a little something in my day. Though, as with all of the games on this top 10 list, duh, that's why it's my top 10, I would definitely recommend checking out Mindburners Into the Void. The next game on this list is another game that plays in just about 5 minutes or so. It's one that I had no idea about until I was doing some research and making a purchase at the Game Crafter. Looked like it was becoming a fast favorite of a lot of people in the solo community there. So I took a risk on it, and I have not been disappointed, let me tell you. Game number 5 is First! Exclamation point, question mark. The goal of the game is to capture the souls of 8 different monsters in order to lift the curse that's been placed on you by this evil witch. The cards will have quite a bit of information on them, including a monster that you are trying to defeat, a weapon that you are going to be able to push your luck and draw to try to hit the monster's health or lower, because any damage that goes over will be ineffective. They also have a unique item which you can use by getting loot, and some of the monsters even have special abilities that you'll have to take into account when combating. Again, wonderful use of push your luck here with trying to hit the values. It's basically like blackjack in a way, where you don't want to exceed the value because then those cards will be wasted. And it's very important that you don't waste cards because the deck represents the amount of time that you have to lift the curse. So once you get through it, that's it, game over. I found that though it is a push your luck game, it is super well balanced. Each time I've played, it's been really close either one way or the other. And although it has that word luck in it, the times where I have fell short of collecting 8 souls, I've been able to pretty clearly see what I could have done better in terms of utilizing items or just taking damage instead of flipping more weapon cards and things like that. This is probably the shortest pocket game that I've had here on this list today, but it is a super satisfying one. I also love that it does come in a tin. It just makes it very portable and very easy to like throw in a go bag if you're wanting to bring it to work or bring it out and about. Like, this is a game you could absolutely play on a train or a plane. It takes up almost no table space. Overall, this would be my go-to on the go game off of this list, and that is Cursed from Goblin Hour Game. While this next game can also fit in the palm of your hands, I assure you that it is anything but micro in terms of the scope of the game, the playtime, the table presence that it has, a certain amount of gravitas, if you will, and the amount of strategy and depth of thinking that you have to put into it while playing. Game number 4 is Pocket Master Builder. This is one of the few games that I would say, as a purely 1 to 2 player game, primarily for me solo, has a very Euro style feel to it. A lot of pocket games tend to fall into like the push your luck or tiling kinds of categories, puzzliness, which is really fun, but this one feels really chunky, especially given how unassuming the packaging is. In Pocket Master Builder, you are going to be constructing a kingdom of cards, trying to build up defenses along your wall, gathering resources, constructing buildings, moving up your donkey tracks so that you can utilize and move goods more efficiently throughout your kingdom, and constructing landmarks. On each turn, you're going to be placing out a card into your grid and potentially assigning workers, which you will be able to recall later in order to get the resources on the cards. If cards have matching borders, you'll be able to get both resources. If they only have one, you'll have to make a choice. The gameplay is really tight because in order to build buildings, you'll be, like I said, recalling those workers, but also discarding cards from your hand for the bottom resource. However, these are limited by your donkey track in terms of how many cards you can discard and how many workers you can pull back in order to construct a particular building or landmark. The rules on this one and the iconography were a little challenging to get through the first time. Since getting over that hurdle, it has felt a lot more streamlined, and I've really been able to get into the strategy and timing of playing. The solo mode is extremely challenging. Maybe there's just something that I'm missing to start with, but it seems like the consensus is that it is not an easy one to win. You can certainly modify your target score by adjusting the number of cards that the AI opponent is going to flip over each round. But overall, man, y'all know I love a challenge. Playing Pocket Master Builder solo absolutely fulfills that. I love me some good crunchy Euro games, so the fact that this feels like a fully fleshed out resource management game in such a small package is really impressive to me. Like I said, while I do love other mechanics in games, this felt like a breath of fresh air. So if you're looking for something that's a little crunchier, you're willing to be a little bit patient with the rules translation, or want to wait until I put out my tutorial video, and I would definitely check out Pocket Master Builder from designer Wei Minling. Coming in at the number 3 slot, we have one of the most adorable games I have ever laid my eyes on, and that is For Northwood from designer Will Su. This is a solo trick-taking game where you are trying to impress the most affluent members of Northwood. Each round will be considered a dialogue where you are trying to win an exact number of tricks in order to convert one of the members into giving their support for Northwood. Along the way, you'll be able to utilize unique abilities of those members in order to manipulate the cards that are drawn and win or lose tricks in some cases. I am a big fan of trick taking, and while it is a mechanic that could be very played out, I think For Northwood does an amazing job. One of the best jobs I've seen of all trick-taking games that have solo mode or that are solo based. This game does an excellent job of resolving it, of making it feel like the player has a lot of agency over how well they do over the course of the game. I love that there are different modules. There's like a mini campaign. You can get new cards which freshen up your abilities from round to round. Overall, it's a very streamlined game. Like trick taking, even if you're not particularly huge into solo games, this is one that I would say you should absolutely check out, and that is For Northwood by Will Su. Game number 2 on this list is not only my number 2 pick, but also a game that you could get for free as of right now. So what's better than that? We have Bolé from designer Olga Ortiz. Bolé is a tile-laying game where you are going to be overlapping cards in order to create a pathway to grandmother's house. Along the way, you're going to be trying to avoid those pesky crows which will peck away at your health, and collect as many mushrooms for grandma's famous mushroom. I think it's soup. Is it cake or soup? The thing that I love about this game, besides Olga's amazing game design, amazing illustration and presentation, is the slidey puzzle aspect. I have not seen that in a tile-laying game thus far. Not to say that there aren't any others, but as you place down cards, you're going to draw in a line until you hit an obstacle, change direction. That can be a rock, another card, a border, different things like that. It is such a unique and fresh way of taking tile laying and giving it a spin. You can play Bolé officially with 2 players, but if you have multiple copies, you could, set up the decks where you have the same arrangement of cards and see gets the best score. It's such a fun game, and having that sliding mechanic just makes it feel so unique compared to a lot of other tiling micro games. And again, you can get it for free. You can print it as 9 or 18 cards if you want more variability, so it is a relatively easy build to put together. As far as the components, all you need are a couple of different cubes for your trackers and for the different rocks that you'll be able to place out in order to change up the direction. If you want to do a quick and dirty PvP, you even just print out the cards and sleeve them so that you can use a marker over top of them. I just love how amazingly fun, amazingly attractive, and amazingly accessible this game is. I'm not even going to say if this appeals to you. I don't even care if it doesn't, because you should check it out. You're going to love it anyway. This is one that you absolutely have to go and try ASAP. Full A from designer Hugo Ortiz. Here it is, my number one pick for my solo 2023 list. I'll give you a second if you want to guess in the comments down below. However, I think the answer may shock you. So my number one pick of solo board games for 2023 is a game that is unlike anything else I've ever seen, played, heard of. It has a very unique combination of mechanics, and it is one of the most immersive games that I have had the pleasure of playing, not just solo, period. My number one pick for my solo board games 2023 list is Shades of Ink from designer Jay Yeats. Now this may be surprising because y'all know anything about this game. It has a lot of board game elements, but it is technically a solo RPG. In Shades of Ink, you'll be playing as a character who is investigating these mysterious forms called shades. As you go throughout, you'll be journaling your experience. The cards will combine together in order to create a prompt, give you grid placement, and give you objectives and abilities as far as the number and suit of each card, which will allow you to defeat shades. I love that as you progress throughout the game, that you're actually going to be drawing out a final shade on the grid. Such a cool way of seeing your progress pay off for that final encounter. And the prompts and artwork are just so evocative. It's hard not to be drawn in by the mystery and the overall aura that this game has about it. I'm not somebody who is particularly drawn in by theme. I'm the person who skips all of the cutscene dialogue in video games. I'm so sorry. I know that's like really bad. So I was very skeptical when I thought, how is someone going to manage to engage me with just a small deck of cards with some blots of ink on them? But this game is beyond alluring. And although I had a good time playing it the first time I played through, I thought, how is this going to differ from play to play? I absolutely love Shades of Ink because it not only gives me a challenge in terms of managing my hand and my cards and my abilities, trying to decide whether it's a good idea to push ahead and try to capture shades or just to defeat them, where they'll later, or do I want to just take a loss? Do I want to use a second wind and some of my health track abilities? There are some mechanics here that are super solid and make for some really interesting, challenging, puzzly gameplay. But at the same time, the puzzle and artistry of responding to the prompts, of making your story fit not only into what the cards provide you when they overlap, but also the outcome of the encounter and how it pushes the story forward is an equally satisfying puzzle. While I love my crunchy math Excel brain, I do have an artistic side. I love writing and creating. Shades of Ink is just the perfect marriage of those two very opposite, separate things in a very satisfying package. So I would urge you, even if you're skeptical like I was, if you want an experience unlike anything else, you absolutely have to check out Shades of Ink from designer Jay Yeats. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 solo board games 2023 edition. Let me know in the comments down below what games I may have missed. If you have any suggestions of other games I may like based on this list, I love hearing from y'all. I've said it a million times, I'll say it a million more. Best thing about solo gaming is the amazing community surrounding it. I have been hard pressed to find more inspiring, creative, thoughtful individuals in many other hobbies and other areas of the board gaming hobby. So please let me know which games I should be checking out down in the comments below. And feel free while you're down there to check out suggestions that other people may have shared as well. Thank you as always so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Let's be honest, y'all should have known that that first game was the biggest box you were gonna see on this. Also, very important update. Whatever.